Welcome back to the Dungeon Messter, the show where I'm a mess, and so can you. Today, I'm going to be working on this guy. Now, when I planned all these colors out for these little Doar penguin folk, I really thought I was going to paint this guy yellow. But I've had such a hard time with the yellow that I think I'm actually going to go with a red on him, and then the last one will be blue. So yeah, that's what I'm going to do. I'm going to paint this guy. He's going to be the red Doar, and let's see what happens. So I always start with the deepest parts, right, which is usually your skin. And this guy, in this case, it's feathers. I'm going to start with his red feathers right there. And already I am pleased with my choice to go with the red over the yellow. I really think the red just shows up better. It's going to take me fewer coats of paint, and it's going to stand out a little bit better against the white of his chest as well. So let me see if I can sneak that red in there. And the fact that I've got to sneak the red back in here against his feathers, underneath his hat, and inside his coat. That's the whole reason why we paint the deepest, farthest parts first, because they're the hardest to get to. If I mess up and I get some red on his hat or on the inside of his coat, that's easy to fix when I go to paint the hat or the coat. There's actually not a lot of his color showing, which makes me glad that I decided to go do the little dots on their chest, although he's got this little shell that's going to cover up some of his stuff, so I got to think about that too. But and he's got these sleeves. Gosh, there's just not a lot of this guy showing. He's got this little bit right here, the end of his flipper. Is that what they're called? On a penguin flipper? I don't know. Probably a flipper, and it's not a fin. It's not an arm or a hand. So he's got that showing. Obviously, he's got his tail showing. And he's got some pants on. I figure out what color I'm going to do those pants. Usually I plan this stuff out, but this one I'm kind of doing on the fly because I really just decided to change him to red. So I got to reevaluate all my everything else I was thinking. Honestly, since I'm doing him in red, I kind of want to do his jacket in yellow, like make it like a rain jacket. I could do his jacket and his hat in yellow, like that little rain jacket style. Or I could save that for this guy. This guy's a fisherman. He's obviously very similar. I'm going to do him in blue. Maybe I'll do his jacket like the yellow. I'll do the yellow. Yellow and blue are opposite colors on the color wheel, so the yellow would really stand out against the blue. So I think I'm going to save the yellow jacket for him. This guy's more of he's a dealer, right? He's got all these cool things inside his cloak. So maybe we'll do his cloak in like a dark brown. Or a light brown, because he is red and I want it to stand out. It's tricky with the color wheel. You always know what colors are opposite, right? You got 6 main colors, and there's always an opposite, and that's easy. when you start introducing browns and metallics and that kind of stuff, it gets a little bit more tricky. I really think that's all the red on this guy. He just doesn't have a lot of him going on. So let's move on to the next deepest part, which is going to be his chest and his face, all that white plumage. Actually, the truly next deepest part would be his eyes. And that is something that I have neglected on each of the previous penguins. I've done their eyes far too late. And then I have to come back with the white and fix my mistakes. So maybe I will get to the eyes earlier this time. Yeah, let's do that right now. Just realized that I'm a little bit off. Normally you can see over here. So at least you can kind of see where I'm cleaning my brush off in my water. Okay. Let's do his eyes. When I'm doing something that's like really tiny like that, I like to get my brush wet and there's kind of a clump of paint on the end. See, it's like looks like a drop of paint. And if I'm doing something like eyes or something really precise, I will kind of wipe the paint off until there's less paint on my brush. Like that. And then I can come in and be a little bit more precise. Like that. You probably can't even see that, but it's that's a perfect little eye there. There we go. There's his other eye. Okay. Now I can finish the white, and then I'll come back and do the eyebrows. And this is why it's good to have a wet palette, because sometimes you want to use one color when it's convenient, right, to get those deep parts. But then you want to come back with that color later. And on the wet palette, I know that that's still going to be it's still going to be good paint. Before I had a wet palette, my paint would dry out. And then I'd have to come back and squeeze more of that whatever color. And if I didn't use that color right away, when I came back to it later, it was dry. And that's a great way to waste some paint. I may have added, on several of these colors, I have added thinner again. But especially on the white, I don't know why the white tends to want to clump up like that. But I haven't, I have added more paint, but I haven't added more paint just because it dried out. Okay. There's his face. Let's go ahead and do those eyebrows. Like that. Gotta make sure I get the tops of the eyebrows, because people will be looking down at this mini. So the top's the most important part. I'm going to go ahead and set up my my magnifying glass so I can see what I'm doing. Oh yeah, I screwed up that eyebrow. I went way wild with this eyebrow, his left eyebrow. Let me just paint some white over that. Oh, I did not do as good with the eyes as I thought I did. That's funny. My old eyes just don't. They don't anymore. Man, you ever want to humble yourself, paint a miniature, and then look at it under a magnifying glass? Or take a good quality picture of it, a close up picture with a good camera, and you'll, if you're not humbled by that, you're a better painter than I am. Lots of touching up for me to do here. Okay. Oh yeah, down here, I didn't get any of this. Okay. Got the red and the white. Let's see, what do I do next? His pants are different than the other guys. This guy's pants have one split down the middle, and then they're kind of stitched up the front. I think it would be awkward to do them two different colors. So I think I'm just going to stick with one color for his pants. I'm not going to do red. That's his feather color. I think I'll just do his pants in that blue, kind of a blue jean blue. Blue looks good against red. Let's see. His pants are kind of split. I assume this thing popping up here is his pants. I don't actually know that. But it is now. I made the executive decision to paint these little upshots here as the same blue as his pants. And I'm going to consider that evidence that it is his pants. Now I got a lot of space here. I'm going to kind of paint around the edges and see what's left. If I've got a lot of space after I've done the edges, I might switch to a bigger brush and fill in the details with that. Oh, I'm actually noticing there's a little bit more under his coat right here. There's what would be his feathers. Now it's going to be totally in shadow, so I don't know that I'm really going to worry about it, but it might be nice to put a little bit more red right there. I like this blue. Let's get down to his feet here. Get under the tail. Right now I'm just kind of taking the paint that's there and smearing it around. This paint is going on a little bit thick. I probably could have thinned that a little bit. But I'm not going to worry about it now. I'm also not going to worry about the fact that I just painted over the stitching in the front with blue. that doesn't matter. I'll come back and fix the stitching later when I do final touches. I've got final touches on all of these guys that I need to do. Again, as I paint the underside where it's almost all black from the zenithal priming, there's going to be, it's just going to make it a darker blue. And that's exactly what you want. That's the point of the zenithal priming. Pretty good, except for right here. It comes up to his tail. There we go. Okay. Penguin's got some blue jeans on. I am going to go in and touch up that little bit of red right in here. I think that will help to sell the idea that he's lifting his cloak. Or his coat. I guess it's not a cloak. Yeah, you can hardly see it, but it's there. I know it's there. Sometimes I do things just because I know they're there. So, kind of tempted right now to use one of these inks. I don't use a lot of inks, but I do like the inks because they do tend to go on real thin and they tend to show what's under them. So an ink here would have a lot of this white showing through, and then down here it would get a lot darker, but I would still be able to paint all of these little things that he's selling, and I wouldn't lose the texture on those because the ink is so thin. And I think I just talked myself into it. So, what color ink? What color should his coat be? I want it to be kind of dark. So, I think I'm gonna go with this black green, they call it. It's just a dark green. Usually I try to shake everything up before I start recording because I have this cool 4E's scientific mixer that I think it's like a medical test tube mixer, and it makes a loud noise, but I want to make sure that this is all pretty mixed. So hang with me for just a second while I blast this. So it's really important to make sure that your paint and your inks, anything else you're using, is well mixed. And a couple things that help with that, if you don't have a test tube medical mixer thing, is you can get these little mixing balls. They're just stainless steel, and you pop one of these, you take the cap off of your paint, and you can pull this part off right here. You pull that off and you drop one of those balls in there, and then when you shake it, you got something in there rattling around to actually help mix the paint up. They do this in spray paint. So when you shake a spray paint can, you can hear that little rattle, rattle, rattle. That's what that is. It's just a little metal ball in there, and it helps to mix up the pigment in the whatever medium they use. So this stuff, the ink, it's like somewhere between a paint and a wash. It's thicker than a wash, but it's thinner than a paint. So it's going to go on very similar to a wash. And I'm just gonna blast it in here. You do want to spread it out. You want to be able to see what's under it. So in this case, I want to be able to see like the dark underside of this jacket. That's working. Get up here. Gotta be careful around the red. You also got to be careful that you spread it kind of evenly, because if you do, it's almost like a stain where if you let some of it dry, and then you go back over it, it's going to double the darkness. So you kind of got to go fast, but not too fast. As fast as you're comfortable to get the look that you want. I don't know if you can see the, yeah, it's kind of puddling in the crevices, and that is exactly what you want. Like this spot right here where this arm, his right arm comes down, it's going to puddle in that crevice, and it's going to make it a nice dark green. Just like the whole point of a wash is to do that same thing. To kind of puddle in those crevices and make them darker, so it gives the illusion of shadows and light. I'm going to come back to that because I'm already wet over here. Let's get this up under here. There we go. Okay. Now, that's looking pretty good. I do have to get the inside of his coat, and that's always tricky because you're right up against the white. So I'm gonna hope that that I can do that without screwing up my white. It is okay if it gets a little bit in there. I think that's okay. It's almost impossible to like not have one color overlap another. But now I can see where I got the white on the inside of the coat, and since I'm not using a paint, I'm using an ink, it kind of shows up. But I'm going to leave that alone and proceed with the understanding that my friends aren't jerks. And nobody's going to pick this up and say, hey, that's some white showing right there. You did a terrible job. Because you can spend a lot of time trying to fix these stupid little mistakes that in the end, they don't matter. Right? What matters is that you have a good time. I always have a good time playing Dungeons and Dragons with my friends. I've got great friends. And they're great role players. That's what matters. Okay, I'm starting to pay attention to his collar now. I do have to get inside here, kind of slide around. I don't want too much on my brush when I'm doing this kind of delicate work in here. I just want to add a little color. This collar's weird. I don't know if you can see that. Like, the collar comes back up here. So I'm going to paint that because that's part of his. Normally, I would say that was like a vest or something, but this guy's not wearing a vest. So he's got this sort of double collar that pops up. A little bit of a weirdness in the sculpt, but this is a much better sculpt than I could do, so I'm not going to complain. Okay, now I'm just going to go back and add some green where I've already painted and where I want those shadows to show up. Right? So this is where you can really like accentuate the lights and the darks. I don't want to add any more green on his arm because that should be light. It's up. It's reflecting whatever's shining down from above. But this inside here, the inside the jacket, I'm going to add a little bit more in there just to really darken it up. These inks dry pretty fast, so you do have to kind of, it's tricky. You got to work fast, but you don't want to work so fast that you're sloppy because it's hard to clean up. But I think that's pretty good. Okay. I don't know if I want his hat to match. I don't really want to be too matchy-matchy with it, but I do want... Okay, here's what I know. This thing right here is actually a crab claw. So that's going to be the same burnt orange as his nose and his feet. Oh, I need to do his feet in the yellow so that when I go over it with orange, the yellow shows through, because I decided through that happy accident in the last episode or the episode before that I like the yellow undertones, but I like the orange on top. So I'm going to paint these feet yellow, and then I can go over them with orange. Showed my daughter one of my videos from this channel. She said it's very relaxing. She said, "You're so chill." I'm not, that's not, if you know me, that's not the norm. I'm not necessarily the type of person that most people would describe as chill. But there's something about painting a miniature that is a meditation to me. So I do end up kind of chill. I think I want to paint. Okay. I'm looking at this shell right here. I kind of think I want to do it purple, but the purple and the red are very close together. But my other choice for the shell would be pink, and pink and red are also very close together. How's my pink doing? It's pretty... I'll try it. Let's try it. Let's do it in pink. Let's go over it in purple. See what happens. I think that pink is actually a little bit dry. Let's see what happens if I go over I like that. I actually like the pink shining through the purple. I think that's it. Now, his necklace. Do you know what? I just figured out what that dumb double collar is. It's not a double collar. It's the necklace coming up around his neck, which means I've got some space back here for some more of the red that is actually his plumage. I'm painting this on top of the green, which makes it difficult because my paint is thinned, so now that green wants to show through. But I feel like that red is actually pretty prominent. That explains the double collar. It's not a bad sculpt. I just didn't understand it. So I need to figure out what his hat is. I've got orange on the crab claw. The hook over here is going to be silver, along with a lot of the stuff inside his jacket. I tend to stick with one metallic. So I'm going to go with the silver. You can mix metallics, but there's got to be a lot of each one for them to show up right. Okay. What can I do his hat as? I kind of want to use another ink. You know what I could do? I could do a purple hat, and it would help to bring out that little purple necklace. I think I'm going to do that. This is a violet ink. Okay, warning, I'm going to put it on the mixer over here. See what the mixer looks like? That's the mixer. Get this thing back. That's why we don't move the camera. Okay. That should be mixed up. I'm going to put that right here next to my purple. Probably don't need more than 2 drops to do that little hat. I know the purple on the red is a risky move, but let's do it. I also feel like the inks give us a little bit more of a muted color, and since the Doar are supposed to be sort of trying to blend in when they're in public, but they're also a species that wears like clashing wild colors. I feel like this is kind of a happy medium here. The colors themselves are not subtle. This guy with his purple and green could be cosplaying as the Joker or something. But since I'm using the inks, and those tend to be more muted, they kind of blend. They're not as vibrant or as bright as a paint. Um, kind of a happy medium there. I'm not going to worry about getting the purple on the fish hook in his hat because the fish hook is going to be painted black before it's dry brushed silver. I'll talk a little bit about uh, metallics when I get to that point. But if you just paint something silver, it will look like you just painted something silver. And we don't want it to look like paint, we want it to look like metal. Just touching up some of his pants. Actually, I want to get right in here too, because there's a little bit of white showing. There we go. Okay. So let me do his orange, and then I think I'm going to call it. I'll come back for the other details later. But let's start with his feet. I'm going to get these feet painted orange. Okay. Take care of that beak. This is such a tricky position for me. You can't really see how I'm contorting myself here, but I've got a tripod between my hands, and I'm reaching around it on either side to paint this guy, and then I'm trying to look through my magnifying glass, and sometimes it feels ridiculous. If I were really good, I would just look at my computer screen and paint from there, but I'm not that good. So sometimes I do look over and I see things are out of focus, and I'm doing the best I can, but this is one of those things like learning to paint. I'm learning to paint on camera, and it's a thing that's going to take some time. It's going to take some practice. It's not something you get the first try. And I'm not going to beat myself up about it. I just try to learn from it and get better. So that's going to be a little crab claw attached to his hat. That's a cool little detail, I think. Get the underside of this thing. It's tricky. There we go. Okay. Now this is the red guy. I do need to put some dots. Some red dots on his chest. What are we going to do? Let's do 4. 1 there. 1 up here. And then Same thing on the other side. One here and one up here. Those didn't really get dark. There and there. Okay. That kind of gives him the show of red that he needs, because man, you just don't see a lot of red on this guy. You got his tail and his little flipper there. That's about it. Okay. Well, I think aside from finishing touches, I'll have to do the details in here and do these little stitchings and all that. His necklace and the hook. But the base coat, I would say, on this guy is done. So I think that'll be it until next time. Thanks for tuning in, and I will see you again soon. Bye.